For those who are, you used some phrases earlier, building biology and healthy homes. For those that are listening, that maybe that's the first time they're hearing building biology or healthy home, what would you say that really means?
Sure. So building biology is a little bit more straightforward in what it means. The Building Biology Institute is an organization, a nonprofit organization who focuses on education. They actually have a certifying body that certifies building biologists. So you can go to the Building Biology Institute website and you can find a building biologist that's sometimes EMF certified, sometimes new build certified, sometimes they're alternative construction certified, like hemp building and things like that. Um, they also have programs that are a little bit more digestible. So if people are just looking for like, a course on EMF, electromagnetic frequencies or things like that. But their whole focus is trying to reconnect with nature. So trying to, kind of point to the fact that we live in such an artificial environment these days. And we are beings that are made of, we're just molecules, and so the more that we're interacting with these sort of artificial type materials, what impact does that have on us biologically? So it's like trying to reconnect us with nature. So ideally you'd be using we'd all be living like in adobe houses and, hemp houses and things like that, which I think is beautiful and lovely. However, where I live, we use you know, gypsum, right? And so we're building with like conventional building materials. And they do have courses for building biologists in that regard as well. But so building biology, connecting back to nature in your lived space. So whether that's like air, lighting, all the things. Healthy home is more of a loaded term, and it's sort of like high performance home. Like there is no industry defined term. It's not a codified term. What does it mean? That's one of the first things that we go through in my certification process with the realtors is in every single state, realtors have a fiduciary duty to represent the best interests of their clients. So they put their clients' interests ahead of their own. They're supposed to. That's their duty as a realtor. Um, how can you put your client's interests above your own if you don't fully understand what those clients' interests are? So if you have a client who's coming to you with health concerns or considerations and they're saying, I want a healthy home, the very first thing that I advise the realtors to say is, what does that mean to you? And then they start walking through with the client what healthy home might mean. So are you particularly concerned with mold, microbial growth, indoor air quality, electromagnetic frequencies, pesticides, toxins? Like what is it? And maybe it's all of the above, and then they need to categorize it because we can't, otherwise it's like, well, let's go live under the tree, right? Um, so, but the client has to define what healthy home is to them because it means a little bit different to everybody. And I don't even impose my own definition of healthy home. Like for me, healthy home is a home that has a balanced mechanical system. It's resilient, it's comfortable, it's durable, and I'm not having an issue with, leaking pipes that have gone unaddressed and obviously microbial growth, right? That's a healthy home for me. I'm not as concerned with, the fact that I've chosen LVP for my floor. Not really that worried about it. Some people would be very worried about
Hmm.
that. So healthy home means different things to different people, and we should all put our resources to the places that are most important to us. So I think that's super, super, super important thing as people are marketing themselves and as they are advising clients and they're helping clients, and they're saying, I'm a healthy home professional. I'm a healthy home advocate. Like to me, I'm an advocate because I'm literally a licensed advocate. Like that is what I am. A lawyer is an advocate. Other people say they're advocates because they're champions of something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that's an important distinction to make. Are you a champion of XYZ? And if you are, what else do you have to back it up other than your lived experience? So I think lived experience is plenty. The limitation of lived experience sometimes is that we start advising people based only on what we know and what we saw in our
Hmm.
particular set of circumstances. And as you guys know, you walk into any house, it's a beta, it's brand new.
Hmm.
We don't know how it's been maintained. We don't know how it's been built. We don't know how it's been, potentially compromised. We don't know how it's been fixed or renovated, unless, it's like that one granny who's lived in that house and she knows the entire history, over the past 40 years or whatever, which is a gem, honestly. You can find that.
Yeah, those are my favorite houses to work on, actually. They know the
Yeah,
complete
yeah.
history of the home, and I know exactly where to go.
Exactly. Like that's what I tell my husband. I'm like, man, if we could find a little house in the country that just had like one owner and had never been renovated, like, never been energy efficient retrofitted with only the windows or replaced just the HVAC and now it's like completely oversized, then I'm like, man, that's like that framing lumber is gonna be like solid, like
Mhm.
be a good
Oh,
one to
yeah.
go back and fix. Yep. I don't know if I answered your question. I went a little squirrel, but
No,
I
you
think
did. You
did I?
absolutely
Okay.
did. Yep, yep. I
Yeah.
love the detail that went into that answer because it can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. And
Yeah,
it's so important to help people understand what that might mean.
healthy for me just means you got Wi-Fi and NFL Network. If you don't have those 2 things, then yeah, exactly. I'm at
Yeah.
least mentally struggling.
I mean, but you know what? That's another thing. And see, I don't even include that in my definition yet. I'm hoping to get back to like just the personal satisfaction of like being in a space. But like I think when you move from like that survival mode and you go back into a space, it took several years for me to put anything on the walls again in my house, because I was just like I'm so not concerned with aesthetics. And I think the aesthetics are important though. It helps you feel grounded, safe, comfortable. You have your NFL, you have your Wi-Fi, you have your comforts, and that's a nervous system that serves to soothe your nervous system. Um, but because we were in survival mode for so long, I just like couldn't let myself go back to that place of even thinking about the luxury of decorating. And so that's part of the healing process for me too. I did get some stuff on the wall. It's not nailed, but it's let's hope it stays. It's like those command strip Velcro
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Well, also when you're, I don't wanna say forced, but when you ultimately decide to, get rid of all your belongings, the thought of consuming and consumption process and then maybe potentially having to go through that process again, because there is PTSD associated with these extreme things that you have ultimately had to put yourself through.
I
Hmm.
think it's the biggest hurdle when it comes to healing, honestly,
Oh,
is
it's
that the
definitely one of
PTS
them.
yeah, the PTSD aspect.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I agree. I agree. And I think that one of the things that I learned in my healing journey is to appreciate some of the traumas because it helps you. I forget who it, I think it was Tony Robbins. I was watching like the Tony Robbins docu-series or something, and he said something like, we can do all this like inner child work, and we can work on all these aspects of ourselves and think back to how we were hurt or how we were harmed or how we weren't supported, at various areas in our lives, and we can like pinpoint that. But then we also have to take a moment and pause and be grateful for it in a respect because it shaped you to be who you became, and it shaped you to be who you are to be able to get through the really hard things. And so as we kind of went through this mold journey, one of the things that, could be identified as a trauma, but I think ultimately has been a strength for me is just the fact that I will not accept anything other than my very best. Like I just won't accept I will not accept any outcome until I know that I have done everything that I can. I have turned over every single rock. And that is certainly a trauma response in many ways, but that got us through, because part of the journey, when I was telling the story originally, like in the very beginning, I kept hearing myself saying, this person didn't tell us, and we did all of these things, and that person didn't tell us, and this inspector failed us, and that person failed us, and everybody failed us. And that was part of like the original narrative. But then I turned and I thought for a second, actually, it was somebody that prayed for us at a church once. They prayed for us and they said, thank God for revealing this to them. And I was kind of taken back at the time because I was like, this is an awful thing. How are we thinking God? I feel like this is like, I need to apologize to God for something. I can't believe this is happening to us. This is not a thank you moment. Right. But ultimately I was like, you know what it was. And why did we get there? It wasn't anybody's choices, but our own. We chose the people that we worked with. We chose
Mhm.
to rely just on the information that they gave us without asking questions, without following up, without doing all of the things that in my professional life I would never do. You know, why did my family's biggest asset and thing that I was telling my family and my children, you're safe, you're home, you're safe, why didn't I put the same amount of diligence in that I'm trained to do on a daily basis for these companies? And so I'm not blaming myself, I'm not blaming anyone, but it was a growth experience and super empowering for me to recognize that, hey, there was something in this that I contributed to this outcome. I made choices that contributed to this outcome. And it's not a victim blaming or anybody blaming thing position to be in, but it's more of like, I can also make different choices now that I know better, you
Mhm.
know? And so that level of empowerment, I think, is also really, really important as we're like guiding and advising clients, probably in y'all's in y'all's position as well, but definitely in mine where, I tell people when they're calling me to see if like we might be a good fit to work together, I say, "Do you need someone to tell you what to do?" And sometimes people are, "Yes, I want you to tell me what to do." And I'm like, "Well, that's not me. That's not the right fit." Because I felt very empowered only whenever what I want to provide you are the options, and I want you to be fully informed on your options, but I want you to make the choice of what's best for you because this is your family, not my family, you know? And so I think that that empowerment is really, really important for people because you can't just experience something like this and then snap your fingers and never experience it again if you don't change your behavior.
Well, from the perspective of jumping into homeownership,
Hmm.
and not knowing any better, especially in a field where, this information hasn't been at least at the fingertips of your cell phone for very long. I mean, in one respect, where would you have looked had you not been through this experience in the first place? And if you were presented with the information before this, would you have taken it as serious as you do now? So from that perspective, it like you said, you paint the perfect picture. Sometimes, you reach that level of at least appreciation for what you went through, or acceptance of the fact that it happened to you, to find that place where you are at now. And
Hmm.
now you're on this podcast for a reason. You are passionate about it, so much so that it's become part of how you feed yourself and your family, I'm assuming.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And like you said, it's got to be that's part of why I'm like, hey, there's a lot of accounts, on social media and things like that. And I'm super grateful for all those perspectives because I think that maybe some of these people are really good at putting this information out in sound bites to where people are getting more curious. They
Mhm.
are finding these terms, healthy home. What is that? What does it mean? What is maintenance? What is mold inspection? What is remediation? What is the difference? And there's so many people who are really talented in putting out this super complicated information in sound bites that I think is starting to become more mainstream. And I'm super, super grateful for that because I hope that some of these kids, when they become homeowners, that this is just a non event for them.